Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our second episode of LinkedIn Live session on breaking barriers. I'm Meenu Bagla, Chief Marketing Officer at Cyient, and I'm excited to host yet another exciting panel here today. We are here to celebrate the incredible achievements of women and allies who are not just navigating, but leading the way in engineering and technology industry. These women leaders are breaking barriers and paving the way for designing an inclusive tomorrow together. Despite significant advancements, we have seen women remain underrepresented in tech and engineering roles, encountering distinctive challenges stemming from systemic biases and workplace culture. Today, however, we have an esteemed panel of power pack leaders coming from diverse background in oil and gas, engineering, and technology space to discuss actionable insights and best practices for creating inclusive environments, not only to attract, but also to retain talented women. I'm looking forward to learning from their stories, their experiences, their challenges, their journey, and their strategy for driving change. And before I introduce our panelists and dive into this exciting discussion, I want to remind the audience we encourage you to engage with us. Please feel free to share your thoughts, questions in the comment section. Your participation will enrich our conversation and help us learn from each other. Without further delay, I'd like to introduce now our panelists and get started on this inspiring hour of breaking barriers. We have with us today three panelists. We have with us today first panelist Tora Elisabeth Hansen-Tangen. With 4 decades of experience in a male-dominated oil and gas industry, Tora currently is the Global Area Manager, Rosebank FPSO for Aker Solutions. Her career began in structural engineering in Oslo after graduating from Strathclyde University, Glasgow. Her professional path has encompassed diverse roles from London to Kristiansand, where she excelled as a department manager and project lead across various disciplines. Throughout her career, Tora has been dedicated to mentoring and advancing others in engineering as well. As she often says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Tora finds joys in building high-performing teams, mentoring, conducting workshops, and sharing knowledge. Join us as she shares insight from her rich career journey. Welcome to the panel, Tora.
Thank you very much.
We have our second panelist, Malin Ostman. Malin is heading strategy and business development from Wärtsilä Energy, and she has spent over 10 years in energy industry, working with strategy, product management, market development, innovation, market entry, and origination. Before joining Wärtsilä in 2013, she worked as a strategy consultant. And Malin is passionate about driving much needed change in the power sector and enjoying collaborating with talented individuals from around the world. When she's not working, she enjoys spending time with her husband and a Labrador Retriever, her favorite dog, as well as family and friends. She also loves scuba diving. Talk about adventure, right? And exploring the world beneath the surface. So that's Malin for you. Welcome, Malin, to the team.
Thank you.
And we have our own proud scientist, Birgit Kredel. Birgit brings over 30 years of experience and currently serves Cyient as the VP and Head of Sales and Energy Utilities for Europe and Japan. Creating genuine customer value is always at the core of whatever she does. She's passionate about effectively bringing cross-regional and cross-functional teams together to secure exceptional projects and develop top sales performance. With extensive global experience, having lived and worked in 3 continents and 7 countries, she leverages diversity and different cultures to develop and implement new business ideas. And her free time, she spends mostly outdoors. No wonder, cycling, hiking, sailing, diving. Only flying is left, Birgit. A proud mother of 2 boys based in Munich, Germany. So again, welcome, Birgit, to this powerful panel. Lovely to have you here.
Thank you, Meenu. Thank you for this wonderful introduction.
And so let's dive into the discussion. And my first question is for Malin. Malin, you have an impressive career, right? From project development to consulting to strategy. And I'm sure you must have faced multiple challenges. How has been your journey? Give us a glimpse of your journey, your challenges, and what advice do you have for people who want to break the barriers in this area?
Thank you, Mina. So I was born in Finland, and if I think back, I think I knew quite early that I was interested in STEM as a career. I think my parents sometimes still tell me that when I was 5 years old, and you ask kids, what do you want to be when you grow up, I used to say scientist. So back then it was either archaeology or astronomy or something like that. I did not quite end up a scientist, but of course I did end up also studying technology and engineering. And I think I was always quite interested in how the world worked and what was behind natural phenomena and so on. And I think that's probably something a lot of kids share, actually. But the first barrier, if you think about it like that, it's typically might even be that what do you decide to study at all from the start? Because of course also less women do typically start studying sciences and engineering and technology. And I was lucky. I didn't actually have any previous family or female role models, but I had several male family members who studied technology and engineering. And I also had several friends at the time, female friends, who were making the same choice as I did. And I do think that made it easier. So, kind of peer group and peer support, I think is quite important and makes it, more easy and also more fun, perhaps, to embrace the idea of going to technical university. Still my career has been more on the business, financial and strategy side. And also my major in university was industrial engineering and management. So sort of combining a little bit the technical and science side, but also the people and the organization side, because that was also something I was and still am very, very interested in. But in a field such as energy and power, the engineering and science is never far away. So I have to say it's really been a helpful background for me, even if I've mostly worked then more on the strategy side or business and finance side. And your question is a bit imposing here. Looking back at this point, it doesn't actually feel to me as if I've had so many challenges. I suppose I have had, but now looking back, it feels more like opportunities I just needed to dare to take. So I think I've probably also just been extremely lucky in some ways. But some advice that I would give is that it's very important to take chances and to say yes to opportunities, even if you feel out of your depth. So to just still say yes and take that chance, because the situations and tasks that push you out of your comfort zone are what make you grow. And as a second piece of advice, perhaps do not beat yourself up over mistakes, or especially imagined mistakes. It's important to learn from it, but not to sweat the small stuff, because self-criticism can be quite counterproductive as well.
Good point.
I think you are so spot on, Malin, when you say that, take chances, make mistakes, don't be afraid. That's the only way forward, right? Thank you so much. I think this is a great inspiration for many who are listening into it. Let's move to Tora. Tora, you had 4 decades of journey in a very male-dominated oil and gas industry, and salute to you. I'm sure your journey has been also very interesting with its own ups and downs. And while you walk us through your journey, I'm really curious. We all come from very different cultural and geographical and academic backgrounds. Did you face any bias? And I'm not just I'm not just talking about a gender bias, right? Did you face any bias in a career journey which is so unique?
No, I haven't really have had many challenges, as Malin was saying. I feel mostly I fit in very nicely, but I do miss more women in the technology. What I find is that I often think a little bit differently than my male colleagues. And if you're more women, you can then think your thought get bigger and it's easier to get through. So, and also I think it's better for the environment with a little bit of a mixed environment. So I've also studied nutrition in between when I was home with the children. Then I ended up with more or less just females, and I didn't think that was ideal either. So So I do think a mix is what I would prefer. So
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great point that you made, Tora, that, while um, we need more women in tech, but in an industry that you experimented like nutrition, it was many more women than men. I think the balance is where the real inspiration comes from. Thank you so much. Um, Birgit, I know about one credo of yours: doesn't work, doesn't exist. And I love that. And you've always been in a customer facing role. Could you share some of your key milestone moments in learning from your journey that has been pivotal to the success that you have today? And what's that one piece of advice that you would give to um, women who are coming up and want to take a full time career in a very client facing role where you're out there every day?
Yeah, thanks for the question. First of all, I would like to begin what Malin was saying. I mean, taking chances. And I think that's the biggest piece of advice, and don't be afraid. I mean, we
Yeah.
women tend to only take jobs when we are like 130% sure that we can do it, right? Whereas I had some interviews, I'm interviewing a lot for jobs. I have people who have male colleagues who come like with 30, 40%, but hey, I can do this. I can take it. I can learn. I'm a fast learner. So I think that attitude to take chances, even if you're not 100% sure that you have everything today, but yes, you're a fast learner, you can do it. I think this you can do it, which also comes back to my credo, doesn't work, doesn't exist, is kind of, come on. I mean, we don't have to be super perfect every time, but we can do it. And I think that's what kind of brought me through my career. And yes, I was also lucky, but I had quite some challenges. And especially in a technical environment, is that as a woman, you sometimes easily get a little bit overlooked, or not. Maybe when you're in a room and there's customer meetings, and many times I'm the only woman in the room. Okay, you get some attention, but I had it also many times kind of, oh, can you please bring me a coffee? And honestly, I do that sometimes just to make fun of it. And then when they find out that I do have something to say and I have an interesting position, they're very embarrassed. So again, it's taking it lightly, but taking your point. Stand up, raise your voice, take your seat at the table. We have something to say. I mean, if you're certain of your topic, the background and things, don't shy away and get intimidated. Again, I think it's taking chances, fitting in, as you said, Tora, and taking your place at the table. And maybe one more thing, don't walk away. This is what I've seen throughout my career, that because still in many cultures, it is that women tend to be more in family care, be it for parents, be it for children. Stay in the career and try to outsource, try to get help, and stay in the career. It's so sad to see so many amazing women leave, take 1, 2, 3 years off, and then it's very hard to get restarted. It's possible, but it's a bit harder. So stay in. I think that would be one thing I would like to emphasize.
You're absolutely right, Birgit. I think whether you are in an engineering role or in sales or marketing or any role for that matter, I think any culture, we have the imperative today to nurture more women to stay put in their career. You're absolutely right. It's absolutely fine to take a break and come back. But most of the times when I talk to women who have taken the break, that was not their intention. They had to take the break. Was it your intention? Was it your willingness to take the break, or was it imposed on you? The conditions were such that you had to take the break. I think that's important. Also, I think all four of us, who are in the conversation, we have spent a tremendous amount in the industry, right? One of the key learning that I've had is, once you reach up, please do not forget to send the elevator down. I think we all have responsibility, to nurture, more women leaders. And, as you mentioned, Birgit, sometimes the bias is not even gender, it's cultural, right? In your culture, is it okay to debate and argue and step up? or is it to keep quiet and be in the nurturing role? It's so amazing to hear from all three of you about your different perspectives. Malin, I have a question. You talked about that, you are in a strategy, business development role, while Wärtsilä is in engineering. Can you throw some light about the initiatives or activities that you are either championing or that Wärtsilä is doing for more women in technology, right? For nurturing more women leaders. Can you touch a little bit about some of the initiatives? I think that'll be great for the audience to know.
Yeah, I mean, of course, Wärtsilä is a multinational company. We've got almost 18,000 employees in 130 countries. So it's an incredibly diverse workforce. And of course, that's also a super interesting opportunity for us. And it's also, of course, a responsibility. So it's very important to be, inclusive and that inclusivity and is it's embedded. It's a core part of our values. But of course, it also requires work every day to make everybody feel valued and accepted and able to bring their full selves to work every day. So there is that. In such a large company, there's lots of initiatives. But I mean, on the gender balance, I do still think also we have things where we still need to improve. I think as a company, of course, yes, we have more men than women. It's roughly sort of 80% men, 20% women. So of course there's still things also we can do more of when it comes to gender diversity. But maybe to bring in an anecdote and something I've seen myself and that what I feel is quite important is to be very conscious, especially during recruiting. And you mentioned this also, Birgit, and I think that was a really good point. Because, we start out at university, but then typically the next step as a, woman professional is typically then being, applying and being accepted in your first entry-level role in a company. And that can determine quite a lot about your early career. So I think here companies can do a lot to make sure they are inclusive and capture all the potential talents. Myself, I've participated in multiple hiring process for entry-level analysts position in the energy industry, both as part of the hiring committee and then as a hiring manager myself. And one thing I did notice is that women candidates can often be more self-critical and sometimes select themselves out. So as an example, we used to do these analytical case assignments as part of the interview process, and it was meant to be a bit of a stretch task. So it wasn't even intended for candidates to sort of be able to do a perfect job. And I remember the first time my line manager at the time, I was just sort of part of the team hiring or the committee. He talked to me and he was disappointed and even a bit frustrated that a great candidate, a female candidate, withdrew. So I had to explain and open it up that sometimes women may feel like this. They may have sort of felt like, oh, okay, I saw this assignment. I know I cannot sort of do it to 100%. So probably this role isn't meant for me. And I sort of explain that and say we probably need or should open it up a bit, make it a bit feel a bit more accessible, and just explain that is not the intention. And he actually called her back and she continued in the process. So and I've had to make a few of these sort of personal calls myself also to encourage really super female candidates to stay in the process and just give it a try. And I have to say we ended up recruiting some of those candidates that were planning to withdraw, and they have been some of the best recruitments I've ever made. So super talented and more than qualified for the role a few months in. And of course we've hired great male entry-level candidates in that time as well. But I think just making it sort of the starting line fair and kind of explain the context so that people don't self-select out, I think that's very important, and that's kind of like a key responsibility. And then of course it sort of continues on, how do you mentor women leaders and how do you make sure women advance in their careers. It's a broad topic, but I think that's one anecdote I wanted to lift up.
I have a follow-on question, Malin. That's a great point you made about going the extra mile to make it a fair, open, transparent, accessible process for women who are getting hired, right? And because we have the tendency to be self-critical, what are one or two experiences in your 10-year journey where you felt you were in a dilemma that, am I really going to take this up, or should I be that self-critical self? And how did you get over that? I think that will be a great learning for the audience that's listening into.
Yeah, that's a good question. I have to think back a bit. I think for myself, I've sort of sometimes just thought that there's nothing to lose necessarily. If you don't get a position, maybe you still learn something in the process. You become better at interviewing. You get interesting feedback. And I early in my career, I did apply for some positions that really objectively speaking were probably a little bit out of my reach, and it was still very rewarding, and I got very positive feedback afterward. And I think that was encouraging. So of course, also, even if you don't select candidates, and of course this goes for both men and women, but perhaps especially important for women, if you don't select them to a position, to still give that positive feedback, and that it's that you appreciate people applying, and appreciate that dialogue. That's I think one thing. So that's of course a bit sort of like having the framework that what do you really have to lose? You basically only have to gain, if nothing else, and then still experience and a good dialogue with the hiring committee. Another one I think that's important is to have people to discuss with, to encourage you when you're feeling critical. And I've always felt very supported in my career in Wärtsilä, but I've also been very lucky to have people and mentors who've pushed me a bit, believed in me, discussed and brainstormed with me, that I've been able to be very open with, and I think that's very important to grow. So
okay, yeah, I think support system and mindset are the two things I'm hearing, right, that are critical. Tora, how about you? You had a long journey too.
Yes, I think one of my biggest challenge was actually being 25 years abroad, and then we talked about my husband is English, my children are also English. They also lived in US, and then so as Meenu was introducing me, I studied in Glasgow, so been most of my adult life abroad. Then we talked about going to Norway, and I want my husband to get a job. And he said, no, you get the job, and then maybe I would follow you, maybe. And I got the job, and then you sit there, 2 children in good schools, and lovely friends around you, and so on. What do you do? And as I started a job in Norway, the children settled into school. There was also quite a process as well. And a couple of years later, my husband joined me. So I think that was probably my biggest jump. And when I got to Norway, one of my things is that you also need to be aware of who is your boss. You need to be selective who is your boss, because your boss would lift you and see your potential and get you forward. I was very, very lucky. So I had a really, really good journey when I got to Norway. Got into different courses, as well as I did both academic and the practical management in parallel. And so, and also, you also have to be very selective when it comes to your husband, because you need to work as a team. And very often, as an educated woman, you join somebody like yourself who would like a career, and so on. So it's a little bit give and take.
Interesting, very interesting. And I just noticed that Malin, both you and Tora mentioned how lucky you were. My take on this is, if I would have interviewed two men in similar position, they would not have used the word lucky, but more about the mindset and the brilliance and the hard work that you've put together. I think a lot goes to your mindset and hard work, and the way you made the decisions. And Tora, sometimes these decisions are personal decisions that will have a huge impact on your career. And Birgit, you have had a very enriching, very outgoing, fast track career. What has been your journey, and um, what are the challenges that you have encountered in a client facing role? And many a
Mhm.
times, the biases are very unconscious, right?
Yes.
And they need
Mhm.
not be in your own organization, but maybe in the client's mind, right?
Mhm.
Can you throw some light on that?
Yes, happy to. First of all, I would like to add something on what you'd said, Tora. Choosing the right boss and the right husband is so crucial. For example, have a husband, and we actually both started together in Siemens. So actually, Siemens was a great matchmaker. I think many companies are. And we took very early on the agreement that we take turns in choosing where to go. So we moved 10 times together around the world, and we always took turns. So like, I had a chance to go to Singapore, he had to follow me. He went to Switzerland, Zurich, I followed him. So we took turns, and I think if you have these kind of agreements very early on, that really helps, and it's decisive if you can build your career. And also, if you're partnering in, for example, if you want children, if how you bring them up, and that it's not burdening just one, but you're actually both of you are taking turns, taking equal loads. And that's not a given. I think in no culture it's a given that that is on par, that you
True.
equally burden people. So that's one thing. So thank you, Tora. That's so critical and sometimes overlooked. In a sales environment, especially I've been also most of my time in energy. It's I said I'm mostly the only woman in the room. I think it's a very important to opt in. So for example, also when it goes to social things, I mean, a lot of, especially sales, is a lot of also social activity. You go for dinners, you go also maybe drinking, you go to bars or things. And sure, as a woman, you can opt out. I mean, I once had some boys going out, and I was some in an Asian country, and I said, hey, I would like to come. No, it's kind of getting a little bit, maybe not so. I said, no, come on, I can handle that. Sure, we went to some bars where normally maybe I would have not gone on my own, but especially maybe I would say Thailand, then you kind of know where it's going to. But it was very interesting, and it's about this opting in, being a part of, not being afraid. And obviously, it was a very fun and interesting evening, and I learned a lot. So to opt in, and because then you also get that respect, being a part of the team, being equal. You're not kind of the one who's out. So I think that's for me again and again is kind of, and sometimes it takes a little bit. Okay, no, let me opt in. Let not take the elegant way out. And sometimes, yeah, it might not be. I mean, I wouldn't say not comfortable, but maybe you're challenged in situations where you normally would not put yourself. But you always learn something. And normally it ends up to be fun. And then you also get the respect. So, for example, just a quick anecdote, in some countries, especially in Asian countries, maybe also some European countries, in order to be trusted, there's some alcohol in place, because once you drink a lot, normally you lower your barriers, and then people can see if you're still the same person, if they can trust you, because a lot of times business is nearly made as handshake. So it's really about trust building. And that again, sometimes you just have to go through with it, even if it's maybe sometimes a bit tough, but you just have, especially in sales, you just have to go through with it and play that game, play along in that game to earn that trust and respect. And that was in Korea. Then the next morning they said, so how are you? And I'm kind of, sure, I'm fine. And sometimes as women, you put on a little makeup, you look fine again, and said, hey, this was a fun evening. And then came, oh, strong woman. And from then onwards, it was so different. in responding and having respect. So sometimes you have to overcome these barriers by just going along with the game, opt in, be part of it, and also take it as a fun experience. So
Yeah, and I think these are such real practical experiences, right, that we all go through and we learn with it. Couldn't agree with you more, Birgit. And many a times when you talked about cultural experiences, when I used to work in the US, I was working for a huge technology major and selling into banking and financial services industry. And this was like early 2000 when I would walk in, and there are many a times that I would get this comment, you speak great English. And I was like, I so badly wanted to be the elegant and take the compliment as a compliment, but I knew it was not a compliment, and I would say, so do you. And believe me, after that I would never hear this, that you speak good English, because as you said, some of these unconscious stereotypes, right, about who you should be as a woman anywhere in the world is so different. And it's only the balance between opting in and sometimes staying true to yourself, right? And building that trust doesn't mean we have to, at any given point in time, compromise on who we are, right? And that who we are is also culturally so diverse. Malin, you are in Finland, right? Birgit, you are in Germany. I'm in India, right? For us, the rights and the wrongs in our cultures have been so differently defined for women that some of us who are in global roles, you are playing a very fine balance. I think this is very, very insightful. And Malin, that brings me to the next question. Um, you talked about your own mindset and colleagues who are helping you out in your discussion to take you through a dilemma or a challenge. Um, what do you think the industry partnerships or education institutions that are readying us, what kind of role do you think they play in nurturing more women in engineering and tech?
Yeah, that's an important question. I mean, that's sort of where you typically start out before you even, launch your career. That's where you spend, 3, 4, 5, 6 years. Depends also a bit on country and what kind of degree you're getting. And of course, the classroom settings is one thing, but one thing I at least found personally is the sort of, you could say, extracurricular activities, organizations, student unions, or again, whatever communities they are, typically looked quite different per country, what kind of student culture they have, and so on. But I mean, that can be a way to really also not to get it across the wrong way, but you practice different skills that you don't actually learn during the classroom settings in university or during lectures or so on. So it's kind of the social skills, but different from school. I was very active in sort of the student community and student unions, and we also had even some businesses we run together to basically fund activities and so on. And that was a great school as well. So I think that's one part which might be overlooked during university, both as an incredibly positive experience, but also as a way to actually gain competences and skills and experience that will count for a lot in working life. And of course, again, differences are there per country, but some people may feel very sort of like academically oriented and just focus full on that. And let's say, I want to graduate faster than, the normal time and just, put everything into schoolwork. There, my advice would actually be that it can be, in the long run, it might save you more time to also get involved in some other activities, build networks, do some traineeships or summer jobs, again, depending on how that works, in your industry and where you're located. But it's not always the sort of the fastest to the graduation paper in a way that wins, because there's a lot of other things you can use those years in university, to build. So that's one thing. But I think one and that's not even with the universities themselves, though of course they are enabling that community and that ecosystem a lot of the time. And speaking maybe more particularly about universities, I think the examples and career stories are quite important there as well. I think career days can work quite well, or alumni organizations and mentorship programs or career days. I've seen a lot of these really good initiatives. Guest lectures is something that I have some experience with, and I think that can be quite effective also at giving students a chance to see what kind of work is done in various companies, but also get a feeling or a sense for, again, the career stories of the people holding the guest lectures and learning more. So this is by no means exhaustive, but I think a few things that's good to keep in mind.
Yeah, that's great. Birgit, Tora, do you want to add on? How do you think, governments or education institutions, right, can play more active role, and maybe they're already playing in your respective nations and organization? I think, can you throw some more light on that?
I could like to add something. When I come back from UK and started my life in Norway again, I need some more female contacts because everyone I worked with were male. So I joined some of the female network, and one of them was, how do we get girls to choose tech? So we started something we called New Faces. So people who worked with technology in different companies around locally, they visit schools. So, and then presented this children what they were doing at the job and what represent their companies in the area and what sort of subjects they needed to study to be able to do this job. And that also gave the advisors in schools some inside information. And that means also you were in school before they start choosing their subjects. So I don't think we can get early enough in to the schools. And when we did this New Faces, we also did the whole class, girls.
True.
Yeah.
True.
So that has been quite successful.
Great. Birgit, do you want to add something on this?
Absolutely. No, excellent. I mean, especially going to schools, that's actually, I'm just finding out I'm missing that. So there's something also to go to university. So I've done some lectures on cultural interactivity and cultural sensitivity, especially, which is sometimes really by cultures, country cultures, but sometimes it's also by kind of gender cultures. So giving options or giving stories and anecdotes like we're doing today on how things can work. So for example, also what helped me a lot, I was 24 years in Siemens and we had some female networks, and then sure, when I was the question about, do I want to have family? Yes, no. How do you manage? How do you work it? I had some great peers who, for example, a very practical example in Europe, we don't have helpers, which I find is a very tough one. But try to get somebody senior, not a junior nanny or something, more a senior person who you can fully rely on, so that you can partly outsource your household and maybe some of the children work, so that you can focus on your career. That was a brilliant advice, and I'm trying to hand that over to the women I'm mentoring or talking to. Is you need to get the right level of support. So actually, I'm always a strong believer in female networks, because sometimes you think, oh, I'm all alone, and oh my God, I'm the one who has to struggle with all of it. But no, there's many others, and we can learn from each other in very practical ways. So, for example, when I started my job in Singapore, I was kind of, okay, new cultures. I had an APAC responsibility. I've never been in Asia before. So, okay, how do I do this? The first thing I started in Siemens, they called it GLOW, Global Leadership of Women Program, the Singapore section, and we came together. We're like 30 women. We did like regular lunches once a month. It was brilliant. It was helping me so much to settle in, to learn how to do things, getting tips and tricks. just supporting each other. And certainly there was also the fun factor. So I think sometimes we're underestimating it, this networking. And that's maybe one last sentence I want to make it. I've seen it many times that women think these networks are kind of a luxury thing. They're like priority 135C. So if I have time, yes, I attend. I would like to make the strong argument, please make it a higher priority, because it will give you so much. And also this is, and I think somebody said it's a give and take, how you can take, but also give and learn together and overcome challenges together. So this networking part is very important.
Absolutely. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more that, Malin, to your point, more than the academic learning, I think the life skills learning that you learn either on campus or off campus through the network groups is far more valuable. At Cyient also we have a women leadership program, which is less about educating the women engineers about technology and engineering, but it's more about the networking, the support system, the coaching and mentoring to the areas that we talked about, right? I mean, I couldn't agree with you more, Birgit, that this is such an important element of the growth of women careers across the globe. And then in certain countries you might help more help in other countries you might not. But I think striking that balance between racing and pacing is so important for a holistic growth in our career, right? By the way, I'll just take a pause, and I see a few questions coming in from audience for the panelists. I'm going to read it out, and any one of you, please raise your hands, and you are more than welcome to take the question. The one question that I have here is, could you tell us if there was a female role model, whether from within your family or outside, who significantly influenced and supported your journey in your field? Tora, yeah, please.
I can't say it was a female role, but I could say my dad supported me very much, and we were only girls, so I don't know if that makes a difference.
Wow.
So so they supported me at home. Yeah.
Great.
Maybe
Malin,
to add on, I have also my father because of support, but I come from a family with very strong women. So my both grandmothers, and I guess it was also part of the Second World War, that lost their husbands. They had to completely restart on their own. Really tough women, and making a career which was not intended. Both of them were more kind of, I get the kids, I do the household, I manage everything in the background. But now they were forced into taking up a new profession, feeding their children pretty much. And that I think was also, my mother started a new job, I think was 58. And even changed cities, moved into a new city, took up a complete new role, and really made it through. So there's some strong examples I had in my family where it's also and I think comes back to you, Malin, taking chances. Sometimes you're forced to taking chances because it's just life, but sometimes also just go for it.
Yeah. And if I add on that, I would say a bit like you, Birgit, definitely good family examples, and also my mom had a professional career. It was not in tech and engineering, but something she took very seriously, and was a leader and managed large organizations and so on. So that of course sets a sort of example, even if it's not exactly the same industry or tech and engineering. Specifically to the question, sort of no one I would exactly single out, but I have to say, maybe to come back also to Birgit, your points about the networks and the peers. So when I started studying, yes, of course there was like a minority of women, but there were still older students who you could see them doing really well, and so on, sort of like a couple of years older than you, 5 years older than you, and then you kind of see some of them move in their careers. So maybe not a single one, but that kind of network I think is important. And to come back to the whole like peers and networks and the sort of priority 135, I think you said, I so identify with that, and I think it's really, really important advice that you gave. I don't want to stereotype, but I think quite often women who rise through the ranks and become very successful in their careers, they sometimes tend to be quite contentious. So, everything needs to be done, and, you kind of overperform sometimes as well. And of course, life isn't just about executing. And the thing about working life, of course, is you're never going to satisfy all requirements or complete all the tasks or get everything done, and you're just going to burn yourself out. So I think sort of also maybe putting that on the shelf occasionally and say, okay, no, this is also important, and this is for me, and these responsibilities can wait, and not everything needs to be perfect. Perfectionism can also be the enemy a lot of the time, and instead spend more time about talking to colleagues and peers, and building those networks. I think that will in the long run probably have a more positive impact on your career than crossing the T's and dotting the I's on every single assignment, and kind of like working late and not engaging with others. So
yeah we so want to do everything right. Sometimes we get so carried away for doing everything right and perfect. Could agree with you more on that, Malin. I have one more question coming in from audience. Again, let me know who wants to take this up. Why is there a little hesitation in being led by a female leader? Is this an unconscious bias, or is it for real, or do we women need to relook at our leadership strategy? What's your take on it?
I don't know. In my department, I was the only female, and I was leading it, and that worked fine. So we try to get more female in, because I believe in the mix.
I think it depends. I think it is real, but it's probably real for some people and not at all a factor for a lot of others. So it of course depends a lot on the context and the culture as well. I agree fully with you, Tora, that if you have better representation and it's not, it doesn't come across as odd or rare, that will certainly help. Over time, and we should have more female leaders. But for me, generally, it's worked very well. But have I noticed it at some point during my career? I have to say yes, and I think it may depend a bit on sort of culture as well. Not necessarily that the relationship itself didn't work, but you could sort of notice that, for example, for them or he to introduce you as their boss seemed to be somehow feeling a bit awkward once upon a time. So I think it is real, but hopefully it should not be so rare, so that it sort of takes up a lot of mind space.
Actually, that's a very good point on being that rare. So, I mean, we had a lot of discussions, maybe in Germany, and I'm sure maybe in other countries as well, about quota for women in management positions, board positions, and things like that. And first of all, you say, we don't need quota. Why do we want even to go there? So, but as I was thinking a little bit more about it, it's about getting it making it normal. So, and if for example, women in leadership positions, board positions, really senior executive positions, if that should become normality, then you kind of need to go over a certain threshold. And the 20%, which is normal still today, 20-25% will not do it. So they're like some sort of a quota to reach that level, and then please to get rid of the quota just to bring that normality into it. I sometimes feel could help, because yes, in technical companies, you tend to be the only woman in senior leadership positions. And then you're always the one, especially in the beginning. I think over time, we all just become people and humans, and we interact, and then becomes normality. It's maybe the first couple months where you're a little bit that have this special portion. So I don't know. I would be interested. I mean, there's a lot of discussions about quota. Is any one of you come across that, or what's your opinion on that? Would be interested. If I may, sorry, Meenu.
Could I just add that you often see that a company who has trouble want a change in management, And then they think, okay, we put in a woman. So very often then the women get a very challenging job.
Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And then that comes out.
Oh, yes.
So, yeah.
I think it's yeah. I'm not sure about the quota or the non-quota, but I think the point that all four of us are making is that can we get a fair starting line, right? And fair starting line doesn't need to be an equal starting line. Equity and equality are two different things, and if that's taken care of, I think your potential to break barriers is much better. Great point, made Birgit by you. I think time for we have 10 minutes left, and time for rapid fire. So I'm going to go in alphabetical order. To Birgit, you are the first one, and no time for thinking. Spontaneous answers. Describe your leadership style in one word.
Energetic.
Energetic. Okay, great. Malin, here's a question for you. If you could go back in time and give your 21-year-old self one piece of advice about your career, what would it be?
Don't worry so much. Things will turn out great.
Oh, good, good. Well, I pose the same question, Tora, to you.
I think I have to answer like Malin does, because it is a tendency to worry too much. Things get sorted. So jump on the opportunities and embrace them.
Okay, that's great. Tora, I have another question for you. What's your favorite piece of technology or engineering marvel that inspires you?
Oh.
Or maybe that you use on a daily basis because it's so part of your daily life now.
A technology role model. I think it's more the technology in itself.
Okay.
I quite like Michael Mosley, for example, who just died, the doctor. He had lots of apps and podcasts and a TV program where he actually went in and experimented with himself, the different medical issues. So, yeah.
Good. Birgit, what's most unexpected skill you picked up in your career, which has got nothing to do with your career, but it helped you in your career?
That's a difficult one. Maybe let me try. So before I started a new job, so I was 24 years in Siemens in a very also great career with many options, but then I decided to move out. In order to get myself prepared, I started some courses on Coursera, and one was Python for beginners. I mean, I had never to do anything with coding or nothing, but I said, come on, I mean, I need to learn something about this new digital whatever world. And it gave me really some basics. It was tough, even if it was only for beginners. I found it tough because you need to get into that mode of thinking and how you do things. But it opened up not a new world for me, but just made me also think again, hey, even if you're not 20 anymore, you still can learn. And I finished that course and got through it. And that really helped me to embrace newer things, to relearn, learn, and really brought me again into that learning mode, which sometimes when we are in our careers, fast paced, we do all these things, we tend not to be so open for learning because we're busy. I mean, we're busy with lives and everything. So that was actually a good experience to go into something completely new and pass it, not master it, but pass it. So that was a good experience.
Interesting. And what's the most common misconception people have about you?
About myself?
Yes.
I mean, you know me. I'm not a very tall woman. I'm more short. So a lot of times they kind of, oh, she's the nice one, and then they find out that I can bite. So I think that's That's something people are sometimes a bit astonished about. Kind of, oh, okay, she can take a stand. Let me put it more that like she can take a stand. She can be a little bit tougher. She can try to push through things, which normally you would first not. On first sight, you have that bias. Kind of. She's a nice small one, and that's very interesting to see sometimes.
Interesting. Okay. Malin, and maybe this is a common question for all three of you, and Tora, you mentioned about who inspired you the most. Malin and Birgit, who inspired you the most in the last 10 years of your journey? I mean, when we are young and we are starting out, there's so much of inspiration around us. But as we go through the practicalities and levels of our career, I think new role models emerge. So, who are those role models in the last 10 years of your career?
There's several that I would pick out for myself. So I think certainly some of my previous line managers would fit into that box, both male and female. But it's sort of like hard. I don't know. I'm not the kind of personality to really kind of like focus on one role model. I think I always try to kind of learn different things from different people. And when I see someone, executing something really well, I'm like, wow, that's so inspiring. And is there some part of that I could do while still sort of like, being my genuine self? But it's always been a bit hard to sort of like, okay, to think in terms of one role model or one idol. But I have to say I've had several people I really admire.
Yeah. And it's encouraging to hear that you have had your role models or people who you admired and inspired as your line managers. I think that's very encouraging. That's very heartening. Tora, Birgit, you want to add any comments here?
As I mentioned, I thought it was important to choose your manager, and he has been great to me, the way he has managed, and
I think
probably been my role model in the way I manage. Yeah.
Interesting. Birgit, any thoughts on your role models?
Well, I think I was lucky in Siemens. We had some female board members who were very impressive because, again, it's also very technology, male oriented. For example, Janina Kugel, and I don't know if she's on the call today, to stand your ground, to be yourself. And I think we've talked about this.
True.
And to just don't give up, but be your true self, and with your ideas, stand and push things through. Without getting too caught up in things and getting, I don't know, some people get very tense, but just kind of do your thing, be yourself. And also we had a board member, Lisa Davis. She was running oil and gas, which that was like 10 years back, which was quite new, an amazing executive. I learned so much from her and in this oil and gas industry, which at that time was a bit new for me. So yes, I think, as you said, Malin, there are several, and we come across, and we see something, kind of say, yeah, let me learn from it, not copy paste, but let's see how can I use this into my thinking, in my doing, and how to make things better.
Right. If I can build on that just really, really quickly, because I also noticed there's a really good comment in the chat. One quality that young females should develop to rise to leadership positions. I somehow feel, Birgit, that your answer and, stand your ground and be yourself would fit just so perfectly as an answer to that. And the one I thought about myself is also a bit related to that, but, confidence. So, believe in your, in your competence, in your ability to do things, and just have that confidence. I think that's a great way to also advance and inspire kind of trust and credibility that will allow you also to advance in your career.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more. Well, we are almost on the top of the hour, and I want to thank the panelists as we conclude our Breaking Barriers series. It's clear that achieving gender diversity in these fields require a sustained effort, but I think 3-4 things that came out very clearly is take chances. Don't be afraid. opt in or opt out as you want to be. Stay your ground, and don't forget to mentor and coach and seek out for the network and support. It's okay to be not okay, and it's okay to reach out and seek that support. I think that's the key learning that I see. Thank you so much, Birgit, Malin, and Tora. This was an exciting conversation. This was an inspiring conversation. And I think the bottom line takeaway for us is, by working together, I mean, for example, just look at four of us. We are from very different fields, very different backgrounds, very different cultural backgrounds, but there's so much to learn and network from each other. And there's a huge amount of learning and championing that's yet to do. And let's continue to champion the diversity and inclusion, and ensuring that women not only enter these fields, but also excel and lead within them. And I would like to thank our audience for putting in the discussion and posting the questions and keeping it engaging. Again, thank you all for joining us, and let's keep breaking barriers. Thank you so much, Malin, Birgit, and Tora. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Bye-bye.
Bye.